Right, good evening, everybody. We'll just wait a couple of minutes and then we will be online, and we are online. We'll be ready to go, and we'll be doing a step-by-step process for about 30 minutes of getting the drawing together. But what I want to do first is just have a look at where we were in the past in terms of what we've done. And those of you that have been a part of this right from the beginning, the idea is to just try and keep things simple. And also to give the idea that everybody can do this. All you need is this little Pilot fine liner, which is a water-based ink pen. And we just go through the process of seeing where lines are compared to other lines. All right, so that was our first week. And we looked at the basics of, and we're going to do a little bit of this today, is looking at the basics of how we make trees. And we're going to scribble around with the process of making trees today. So, in particular, the direction that the object might be growing, and to try and really emphasize that it's all about doing a lot of scribbling. And when we moved on to the second week, we looked in more detail at, again, simple cross-referencing, horizontal strokes, and lines that give us a sense of direction. And so at the same time here, we look on the side, we've got the vertical as a centerpiece, and we were flicking outwards from that. Now I'm going to come and talk about that flicking process in a bit, as there was some concern last week over what I actually meant by that. From the top, we're looking at the same thing here. This is as if we were looking from Google Earth, and we can flick outwards from the top. That same sort of scribbly technique is what we're going to look at really focusing on today. And as I said, if you're just joining us, welcome for an evening of just using a pen and ink. Hope you're all together again. You'll see this was a terrible one where we ended up losing track of people. We lost electricity, then we lost our online connection, and then there were some tears, and it was a little bit of a tricky week. But we learnt quite a bit in terms of those cliff scenarios, and we're going to repeat some of that again today as well. Then we went on to the legendary bridge of Imaginary Land, where our engineers in New Zealand sent us some unhappy comments, but that's fine. And I did apologize to Ian that if you were to stand on this bridge, it would die. And that is perhaps true, but it was more just about squiggling bricks and getting a sense of depth and creating an adventure of perhaps being underneath that bridge, and all those funny nursery rhyme stories about being scared under bridges and in an old home, but a sense of perspective. And that's what we're looking at trying to create, is a sense of perspective. So an element of depth, an element of contrast. This was quite a sneaky one, where we looked at actually trying to create a very simple image by focusing on 1 point perspective and lines just coming out from that. Simple lines straight out from that 1 point perspective there. And the rest is actually quite simple, but ended up producing some really amazing drawings. If you look back on the feed to previous weeks, there was some great work done on that day. Fenton, the dog, got hold of this one. That's why it's a little bit dirty, but this is again quite a simple scene, but quite tricky. We had some objects that looked like trains, and then some that looked like bricks, and some really fantastic cars. And this was a lovely little journey through what it is to go on adventure. Then we went just across the border up into Zimbabwe and the Esegodini area, where we had some folk join us from Falcon College, and we had a lovely series of a concept of a bridge, and then again picking up on those tree ideas, a little bit of water, and then on to last week, where we were finally looking at really trying to fine-tune this flicking technique. Now, for the sake of Martin, who sent a message without realizing that he didn't understand what this concept of flicking was. So I'm just going to go over it again, where usually when we're drawing, we've got our pen onto the page and we can just keep it on the page, or we will take it off the page and we will go in a direction. All right, so if this is our tree, we're taking our branches out, blah, blah, blah. All right. What I've occasionally said is that when you get to the end, you flick it, which means that I'm putting my hand almost to the back of the pen and I'm just flicking. And what that flicking does is it allows it to just go from a very thick line to a very thin line. And because branches end up being quite thin at the end, it just allows for that little bit of random behavior. So when you squiggle and then you flick, squiggle and flick. And that technique is also used for when we are working on the grass in the foreground. So we can keep our hand on the page if we want to, or we start at the bottom and we flick upwards. And all that does is just changes the texture of this work that we've got going here. All right, so enough. We have hit the bell at 5. You want to be working with your page being horizontal. Last week we were working vertically, and this week we are back to working horizontally. Okay, and just as a standard marker, we're going to work for about 25 minutes using the pen, and then we're going to switch to needing a little bit of any brush that you might have, and we will mix it up radically then. And so, just so that we have an idea of where things are compared to other things, I'm going to make a little mark in the center of the page here so that you can see where it is compared to everything else. And that's usually the key, is to try and see where things are compared to other things. And today I want us to picture that we've gone on holiday somewhere and we've taken the time to go for a little walk, and we've ended up, and I'm breaking the rules a little bit here and saying that we've ended up in a riverbed where we're now going to anticipate what this riverbed is going to look like. And the reason I'm telling you what it is that we usually have these preconceived ideas on how to draw something. And so what we're going to do is we're going to try and keep it simple by simulating what this might be. Now, you've got halfway here, and we've got halfway here. We've got 3/4 up on the right here. All right, and what we're going to do is, from halfway, we are going to scribble our way all the way up into the direction of 3/4 on the right-hand side here. So I say again, it's just a scribble. You can't actually get that wrong. It's a little scribble. I'm going over a second line just to say how simple it is just to scribble. It's not that important what you make there. Okay, so again, from that scribble line, we're going to treat that as our horizon. So we've broken the halfway point then. We've lifted it up there, so it feels like already we've got a sense of direction. You want to create drama every time you create an artwork in terms of inviting us in. So you want to be able to stop people to move them. Okay, so on the right-hand side at halfway, we've got 1/4 of the way into the center where we first started there, and then 1/4 of that, so 1/8 into the picture. What we're going to do is just give us an idea of we're going up, we're leaning out, and then we're flicking off. Okay, so I started about 1/8 the way in there from the right-hand side, halfway up. We're going to get an idea of where our first tree is going to be. So I just went up vertically, followed the line out, and then as I got to the top there, I flicked off. All right, and you can just flick off. So there again, we're going to go up, and what we're going to do, get up to just over the horizon line there. We're going to break away to the right, and then as you get to the end here, you just flick. Okay, and that one's going to flick off the page there. Okay, so that's giving us an idea. I can always come back and I can see if the buffalo come around the corner, we've got to make a run for it. At least I've got the basic idea of where that shape might be. And that's a true story. You've got to get ready to run when it happens. So if we come down now, and we've got to picture our riverbed being in here somewhere, and we're actually sitting in the riverbed here. Let's divide that up into half. So we're going to divide the top from the top line there, about halfway between, we've got this space here. If I had to have the bottom, I'm a little bit far away here. Zoom you out a bit there. Just run you down. There we go. Okay, so we've got between that line and that line, we've got about halfway. What we're going to do is we're going to picture the top of the bank before it drops down into the river here. Okay, so we're going to start on the left-hand side here, at about halfway between these two spaces here. So if we look on the left-hand side, maybe 1/3 of the way up. And what we're going to do is we're going to just dribble our way across to that halfway point. All right, and we're going to go past the halfway point, and then we're going to start curving our way down to then fall off the page on the right-hand side of the page there. and that right-hand side of the page halfway. It's just below a quarter, I suppose. You do want to make sure that you are slowly trickling your way in, and then you're going to curve down off the bottom here. Okay, so that's really basically got our shape going. Then on the left-hand side here, now we want to be able to create an area that, let's say we're going to come in and we're going to just trickle your pen in to be just before halfway. And then what you're going to do is turn around and start going off again. And here you can just dribble it off and you can let your pen finish as we're coming off to the bottom right-hand side there. Let's pick that up a bit there so you can see. Okay, so we've got our basic shape very quickly, and that's the idea you want to be able to establish as soon as possible are your basic shapes. And we can see that we're coming into the foreground here, disappearing off to the left-hand side. Okay, now let's really get a move on here. If that is our ridge there, we want to be able to create an idea of now where is that, are we going to climb up this little gully a bit here? So what we're going to do is we come forward right at the bottom where that little spit is coming out. We're going to go with that spit and we're going to come straight across and we're going to meet on our other side here. Alright, so we've gone from that little spit where it came out, we've gone across and we just dribbled along. You'll notice none of my lines are really straight, they're just consistently a bit of a scribble. Okay, so all it does really is just give you an idea of where things are now. If we were to make this into a flat plane, I would be able to bring a line straight down there and then drop it down. So we get an idea that you picture water running. That's the exact same thing. We want to be able to picture water running in order to give us the shape. So if we come down to this area here where we've just come off that point there, we're going to just trickle the line up to the right-hand side. So it gives us an idea that that's probably the shape of that hill there as it's coming down. Well, not the hill, the edge of the bank. Okay, and then we've got another one coming in that's going to meet the top line here. And then what that's going to do is it's going to take a little bit of a turn and go straight down. So we developed a little bit of a sharper edge there. The same thing might be coming down from that side, but we want to avoid having too much of a strange perspective. We want to keep this idea that our field is coming down this way, all this scrub area. So inside here, we want to be able to start bringing lines in and get to the middle, and then they're going to drop down. But drop it down at a little bit of an angle, so it's coming down off the left-hand side here. So you get an idea that that's the angle. Instead of being straight up, it can be a little bit of an angle. So it's a bit of erosion going in there. So now you've created two, and this is really quite exciting because you can just keep creating now on this ridge. You get to the point, and then you cut down in, and you want to go behind our little spit that was coming out there. Okay, and then again we're going to come in and then drop down in between those. And now you can start creating variety. We're going to go again. I'm starting in the similar-ish place in terms of how high up the page. We stop and we go down, but we don't finish. We just stop about 2/3 of the way down. All right, because now we're going to start creating some exciting variety. Once we've gone about halfway down, we can turn around and come up again, because what that's going to do is it's now going to create, and we come off and we meet that one. What that can do is create, and we scribble that guy in between that V, and it's going to create maybe perhaps a little gully that's going in there. Okay, so now what you can do, you've created an idea that that's the shape of the space, and we can come in and create some more detail in there just now. But as I said earlier, I want to be able to focus on creating some really exciting trees tonight. So we're going to go back up to our main tree here, and let's split it and go off, jump up, come down, and you should now, if this isn't your first safari, you should be able to get an idea that this is how we make trees, especially you get an idea that you then take the gap and you come on the other side. You can split off, go up, and it is very, very, very random. You want to avoid things being like Charlotte's Web. You want to be able to come pick it up, go off to the side, go behind it, and then come back down and flick off. So the idea is that you're constantly random. You're just taking a line and you're going up, but you're constantly looking for balance. So we're wanting to create this mushroom shape in this particular tree here. So in order to get that, I'm always looking for completion of that shape. So, and then I'll flick it at the end. So I've come up here, and I've created the stem in the center, then let's give ourselves a break and just follow up that branch so that it has got some width, and then we flick at the end. And the same with this other branches that we've just made. Let's give them a bit of girth there, and then as they get up the top, they turn and flick. So you have the ability to really go up, down, just go with it, and then you flick. And so that ends up really being quite exciting there. And we flick, and now you can speed that up. So you've got the basic idea now, and you want to just go 1, 2, 3, and flick. Up, change direction, and flick. So it's like you're doing one of those Pac-Man computer games from the 80s where you're taking a corner and then you're flicking. A bit more of an organic shape rather than a very geometric Pac-Man shape perhaps. And you are able to then just go with that. And as long as you're making sure that your lines are getting thinner as they get to the top, and then we get lots of little latticing right up the top here. Lots of little latticing. And this is something we haven't done yet, is we leave a little gap and then we put tiny ones in. Now this is going to create a lovely halo effect off the top. So as we're going along the top here, tiny little flicks we're going to create on the top. What that's going to allow us to do is create a body to the top, so we don't have all of these trees that appear to have absolutely no leaves on them. This is a perpetual pen and ink winter, and that's not the case. We want to try and create a little bit of foliage. All right, so we will come back and we'll work on that a little bit more. We have to establish more of this horizon. Now this is where the focus can be in the center of the object, is that we're going to create some cauliflowers. Okay, so we're going to little cauliflower in the center of your page there. Okay, that is the center one. Then we can go next to it and we can create another one right next to it. And then again on the other side, maybe one a little bit bigger, but sitting just behind it. So you've got a little gap there. And then right on top of that, let's pile another one, same size on the top of that. And then a smaller one in the middle of that. And we're creating, it's almost like we're piling these guys up. And then another one on top of that. And then finally one on the top of that. That'll cross over your horizon. So it's maybe like 7 little balls piled up on top of each other, small one in the middle. And that can end up being our bush in the center. And what we're going to do then in order to create that, what we do is we're going to use our pen in order to just scribble into the center of it to make sure that it is dark. All right, all the way on the right-hand side of this object, we are just going to use a flat pen, straight lines, and we are just scribbling that in. You are leaving the left-hand side of all of those to be light. All right, and if we think back to the little trick of going back to light on the top left-hand side, and then just before on the right-hand side, we then, of the next one, it's dark. So we leave the top to be light, and in the bottom right-hand side, it's going to be dark. Top to be light, and the bottom right-hand side is going to be dark. Right, so that it creates, again, a little bit of form. And we will come back and think about how we're going to create more of an interest there as well. What we do now is we're going to come across all the way to the left-hand side here, and we need to create another bush, so to speak, on this left-hand side here. Now, this is a different mark making where it's perhaps a reed, and we've got firmly pushing on the pen so that you've got quite a dark reed feel, and then at the top you're flicking, but you're flicking in the same direction. You're not creating latticing like we did on the top here. We want to stick together those bulrush type things in the center, or the thick elephant grass. And we're just going, and we've got it nice and tall there. And then we've got a little bit of a gap, and then let's do some more. So we're starting quite firmly with the pen, and then we flick up and off. And this is creating a nice grass variety at the top on the left-hand side here. And immediately we can see, there's some lovely, you can picture yourself walking through, and there's very sharp edges to those pieces of grass. All right, and now, that should be enough, and we should come into the foreground now, and we're going to do the same thing here, but just a little bit smaller. Let's flick this up here. And we're going to be going up in the direction towards its family over there. So we're going to go smaller, starting in the same place, and we're flicking up, making our way up, and then we're going to peter out there. Okay, and the same on the top here. We're going to again come up, and we're going to go catching the top of that line that's going up till eventually it peters out as well. So we're creating a little bit of depth to this whole thing, and texture, and character. All right, now we don't have time perhaps to do this thing, but what you can do is do the same sort of heart rate up on the left-hand side here, so you can see that's where the possible grass would come in, and you can come and do it. It's like the stock exchange lines there. Those are quite exciting. They jump up and down like that. Okay, so we've got that central area. What we want to do now is come across the other side. Now we are running out of time, so let's do a lot of little verticals coming in here off the right-hand side. Long ones, short ones, they're sort of generally all going in the same direction. All right, and they're moving off to the left as we go around that corner there. We'll get a sense that it's going to go around into that, around the back there, but we're able to use those lines in order to create form. Okay, and we do the same thing as we continue to come in on the right here. Little lines going down, creating that eroded area. Okay, so let's split this background area now. Just behind this tree here, I'm going to do a light base line all the way across behind our cauliflowers there. And we've now been able to create a little bit more depth, because that is going to be the base of our tree line at the back there. And by doing that, we can then in the back here do some stems going up, some short ones, taller, separating randomly, just lines going up. They're not going to meet at the top, but they are changing direction. They start out with stems, and then as they go up, they break off and break off. So this now should be an easy, sneaky trick to be able to do. You only got a couple of minutes when you're sitting in the riverbank here. It's getting dark, and things are going to start walking down to drink, and you need to get that sense that this is these lovely purples that exist as sun starts to go down. But we want to give it a little bit of information to say that's a little ridge at the back there with perhaps some mapanies or jackalberry or wild mangoes. Okay, and so we've got that as a basic line in the back. We've given enough information there for now. We want to now keep talking about this foreground area here. Let's bring that tree looks like it's a little bit too far away. Let's bring the stem of that tree down a little bit so it's more towards the edge of the bank here. Right, and we're going to flare it out as it gets to its bottom. It flares out. All right, and these lines are going to come out a little bit off the base of that tree. It allows it to have a little bit of a root structure and gives a little bit of texture to that ground area. Right, now how do we make this look like it is more of a riverbed than just a flat area? Well, if we were to have a line coming in that wanders like a snake, so we've got a line that comes around that off where that spit met our cliff line there. We're going to come down, we take a little turn to the left, so it's like an S. And what that's going to allow us to do is just give a sense of wonder. All right, and then we're going to have another line off to the right of that, and it wanders, and then comes off the right-hand side of the page here. A little bit lighter. What that's doing is it just allows us to be the idea that perhaps there's it's a sandy riverbed, and then come into the foreground here and maybe just take a corner. So we're having a little D shape there. As it comes round from that shape, it comes round to the corner. And so these flat shapes allow us to wander forward, and they're very different to all the geometry that's going on elsewhere. And so you get that variety that starts to happen. In this bottom part here now, what we can do is we can just flick up a scribble. And by scribbling up, this is a little scribble there. And let's do that again, where we are literally in the same place. I'm scribbling up and down, and then I'm flicking off parts of it. Very similar to this thing I just did up the top left-hand side here. We do the same thing inside here. All right, and then we come a little bit further forward, further down the page, and we do exactly the same thing again. Let's flick up and scribble there, so we get that to happen. That's looking good. Well done. All right, and then as we continue up here, we're going to do the same thing again. Let's scribble little tufts of grass that have managed to grow in this arid area here. And we come further forward on the right, left-hand side. We are randomly just putting these little tufts of grass as they come in. And we can step back and have a look at that. All right, great. And let's put another one in the middle here, a bit smaller, looking up, and then another one in the foreground. These all just are randomly placed in this little riverbed here. Little tufts of grass that are becoming. And then if you wanted to, you would then be able to put your little pool in as you come into the front here. But we will do that in just a little bit. We've got to create a bit more texture that's coming into the side here. Usually what happens when you get into these sort of riverbeds here is you may have a branch that's fallen over. So how we can do that is we've got a strong line that goes up, and then it immediately drops down and then wobbles again. So let's say that there's a piece of stick that's picked itself up there, then it's broken off, it's been pushed over perhaps by a young bull elephant, and then it's broken, it's gone out flat, it's come down, and I'm scribbling it in here, and then we're flicking at the bottom. So it's this lovely little branch that then has a piece on the top of it as well. It flicks up, drops down, and squiggles off. Right, so you've got that lovely texture that perhaps is giving a little bit of maybe this little piece that's come off the bottom as well, goes up, curves over, and flicks down. Alright, so we've got maybe then off the base of that on the other side, we've got a little tree that's maybe going up that's left over, and we've got little branches coming out. That gives us a little bit of texture on the side of the artwork. Right, so we're going to scribble our way up until eventually, another pen, that we go up and we get to just little flicks, tiny little tree that's coming up off the base of this guy that's been pushed over. And you'll see it's really just about getting some scribbling going. You're not able to do exactly as the person has done next to you. If you're sitting with somebody, there's not going to look the same as yours, but the general structure will be the same. All right, so it's fallen over there, and then we've got that. As you come further forward into the bottom here now, where we did our stock exchange, what you can do is you start flicking up and say, right, I've got some time to do that. I've got time, 20 minutes. All right, so there we go. Time flies. Don't forget this is a sip and sketch, so if you've got a nice cup of coffee going, remember to allow that to, or a glass of wine, or you with family. Let's just flick this up in the foreground here. Or a soda. And remember, the end of the day, it's always great. My wife's wonderful at saying, when I get lost in too much thinking, she says, we need to remember what was the best part of your day, and also what was the worst part of your day as well, so that you're mindful of those things, and then what are you grateful for? And it's amazing how if you run that around the room, you listen to stories and people are fascinating. The amazing things that happened today. If we run around the room now, say, what was the best part of my day? What was the worst part of my day? And then what am I grateful for? See how we're just scribbling this up here? We're doing that on the left-hand side there. Because what we can do on the right-hand side here, whilst I give you time to run around the room there, I'm going to quickly just do the same thing on this right-hand side, where we're going to start at the bottom and flick up, just so that we get it a bit of a texture here. And we're making grass on the side. We don't have time to do the entire bank, but it gives us a suggestion that where it came down to the end, there's a nice little bit of scribble going. This might be quite arid as they all come down wandering there, but let's give it a little bit of grass in the foreground here. And this not starting to look too bad. All right, so we've got a little scribble. Now you'll see how it really does give it a bit of a scribble there. Okay, now if you were to stand back and look at this and look at your artwork, you'd think, goodness gracious, those rocks piled up there look absolutely ridiculous. That is true. We've ended up creating something that now could do with another bush in the foreground here. So we draw a little cauliflower, and then we put a center structure inside it, and then again we just scribble in the bottom of it, alright, so that we can see that there's more information there. And you do the same thing on the other side here. We just create more structure. So, and again, we give that, again, another. You literally don't have time when you're sitting there to perhaps draw a beautiful sculpted individual tree like this. You don't have time to do that. You want to be able to just get an idea. And so in some cases, you will just literally be scribbling on the tops of things, but you're getting the structure right. The general structure. The last part of this now is we're wanting to be able to, both these pens are struggling this evening, is you're wanting to be able to create more structure inside here. So as we came down, we want to maybe just color in between two of these or three of them. And so scribbling down in the direction that that object has been growing. So if the water were to come charging down, it would almost fall off in that direction. We're just going to scribble in there, and scribble in another bit of a gap there. So, and then change the direction down there, so it creates a bit of a V as it goes around that corner, and again around there. So as we start going around the corner, it starts creating a little bit more and a vertical. So those different areas show that these shapes are coming in and out. Okay, and then again on this side here, we're just scribbling in randomly some of these things to show that the opposites. Because what we're wanting to do is create a little bit of a shadow in order for us to, if we have a look here now, where the last part of this is going to be doing horizontal, long horizontal lines on the right hand side of this riverbed here. So I'm doing trying to get a little bit of a shadow going into here. It's flat, right up to the base of that line. We're just scribbling it in there. So we're getting some of this shadow to perhaps drop across here into this flat riverbed. Okay, now you think, well, we still need to create a little bit of information, and that can be done by making sure we've got this little guy scribbled in as well. Let's get that stem scribbled in. Alright, we've got that scribbled in. You'd obviously be able to continue adding information in here. Like you could scribble in really amazingly into the background forest here, where again you keep the pen on the page and you are just, you don't even have to look, you just keep the pen on the page and you're just scribbling away in the back here, because that will highlight the top of this built up area here. And then again we keep going on the other side, we just keep scribbling all the way across the back there, just keep scribbling, and you can break that line up at the top there, and we'll go, and that fades it out quite nicely. Right, so we've got that as a dark, light, you get that contrast to happen. You want these light areas to contrast the dark areas, and we keep it simple that way. This here might also need a little bit of a contrast. Right, so we've kind of run out of time with our pens, but you can always come back and work on this should you wish to add a couple more things. But let's switch to the brush and look for a little technique on getting our trees right, where we've put in some basic structure, and we want to now, you've got enough water on your brush just to, you've wiped it off the side of the jar or the cup, and you've got a full brush of water. We will then be able to just go over the top of it. The first time you're doing this, you'll find that it's very easy to ruin the artwork by just going over the entire thing. You want to be very careful of what sometimes happens quite quickly, is ruining it by painting the entire thing. You want to be able to just follow over the lines that you painstakingly drew, but you're not going to be able to do that totally with the detail of the brush compared to the detail of the pen. The brush idea is supposed to just be able to give the encouragement to bring the whole thing together. And now I'm going to be stabbing at the top here, where I'm picking up a little bit of that ink. I've picked up a bit more water. And what I'm doing, where we've left that gap on the tops of this tree here, we allow that little gap to exist. And what that does is it allows the foliage to catch light in that middle channel there. All right, and so we do the same thing as we come down to the foreground here. We leave a little channel of light, and it allows that idea that there's perhaps a blockade of leaves and whatnot coming to the foreground, picking up some ink from the branch here and coming over into the foreground. Right, so we're leaving gaps. We're not just going over the mark that we're making. We're thinking about how else this brush can actually do the work for us at the same time. And this, we can't work on this for 5 minutes. You want to be able to 5 minutes maximum where you've done the work. And here we are going to do the same thing. Let's think about leaving some channels of light inside this lovely scribbling we've got at the back here. So you're leaving little channels of light. You're breaking up some of the hard lines perhaps, but you're leaving little channels of light. And you can go above the area that you were drawing and just touch the surface of it. And by just touching the surface of it, you're getting, and those lines get closer and closer together. The detail here is your oyster. I mean, you can just pick up a little bit of ink, and if you want to do just some subtle touches there, you'll easily be able to create a lovely sense of depth as that forest disappears into the back there. Okay, so we have broken up that line as we go away there. Now, as you come into the foreground here, the bottom of that line that we had, you don't want to obliterate this lovely field, so you can just break up that line and then just pull subtle little lights off on the left-hand side here. So we know that that is coming down to join the line there. Some of these stems, let's get those stems to have a little bit of ink and a bit of body. Okay, now this is the exciting part where you've got the structure here, and you can just go on top of it, run your lines down, and you've got this bank that is dropping down in here. And we've got, oh no, that's the T, idiot. We've got don't tip your brush into your, okay, so we're flicking up off the grass now. We've got these lovely canyon concepts here, but again, it must be light, dark, light, dark. Don't just obliterate it and then you lose those lovely V channels that you've got created there. And while you're there, you can do a horizontal on top of these lovely marks that you made. Oh, I did it again. Oh, man. Let's get closer. Okay, so we've got horizontals coming on top there. Okay, and so we've got that little shadow area that's developed itself here. Then if we go into these bushes at the back here, I haven't got too much water left on my brush because I'm wanting to be able to get a different texture the entire time. How much variety can we create there? And we're going on top there. We maybe will bring a little bit of it underneath there. So we are getting that light to cast shadows at the back here. So we're getting a little bit of variety to happen. And then last of all, we come into the left-hand side into this bank here. That is the contrast that we're looking for, is to be able to just do these tickle little flicks up here with the brush. You're leaving a lot of the structure and detail that has been put in with the pen. And we're good to go there with that. That's a lovely way that it works there. You can leave the absolute detail of that strong branch. You don't need to go over that. You don't need to go over this lovely spiky elephant grass on the left-hand side there either. But you can then now come in with this grass knolls that we had in the riverbed here as the last bits of it. Now, as well, you could, if you wish to, just pick up ink from those and you just do little horizontal dabs into this riverbed here, and it'll pick up as if they are little elephant footprints, perhaps, little dugout holes here as we come around the corner. And they're just little floppy areas. If you wanted to, you feel like, no, there needs to actually be water in here. So what you can do is create a little spot at the back here, where you've got your little spot at the back there, and we see we're going to create a little bit of water there. You just need to make sure that if you are going to do that, you then just put a bit of ink in there. It's going to be a little bit darker, horizontal as well as vertical lines. All right, you're just going to create a little bit of a darker area, run on top of it with the water, and you'll be able to create that. Maybe if you can leave a little bit of light on the top before it hits the wall, you can do that. But there you might be able to get away with a little bit of vertical lines coming in there. If you want to do it, you can do it in the foreground as well, into the last minute here, where if you want to draw a little shapes in the foreground here, you would then maybe take lines off the edge of them. Alright, so we've got lines going away from that circular area, and off the sides of these as well, you've got lines going away. Shorter on the top, longer on the sides, shorter on the bottom, longer on the sides. Alright, so it's like these little paths are coming down to these little areas of water, and then you want to horizontal lines to fill that space, horizontal lines to fill that space. The one is light and it's dark, and then on the outside of it you may want to just scribble then down. So we scribble in, so the water might be the one that is reflecting the light. Okay, so by having that, then you have the little dark pond idea on the outside of it. All right, and then where you're picking up that ink, what's actually reflecting is maybe perhaps a little bit of light in there. You don't want to do too much, well, but that's the easiest way. I mean, if you want to put a couple little puddles there, that these 4 animals have come all the way down here. We've been thinking about them. We're waiting for them, and they will be here shortly. All right, and so that's that, folks. And give us a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this evening. Next week we'll see you again, and feel free to invite a stranger who thinks that you have to be an artist to draw. I am not an artist, and I've learned to put stick figures together, and that's literally what we're doing. We're enjoying putting stick figures together in the direction that an object grows, that we think it grows. The stem of a tree goes up. We can just color it in sideways. Grass flicks up, trees going sideways. We make terrible bridges and a little bit of reflective water, but we actually have a little bit of a good time. All right, and that's as simple as 1, 2, 3. Look forward to seeing you guys next week. Have a great week.